This chapter 5, what drove me absolutely nuts, translating. I don't think I've spent more time on any other chapter, just trying over and over again. I remember sitting somewhere in California, maybe in Oxnard, at a park bench, and for hours and hours, just trying to get the first couple of sentences straight. And then also determining, like, what really is the point? What's the central point over here? So I could write an introduction. So all this, I'm saying all this by way of that I'm going to be able to do a lot of actually reading what you've got in front of you, to you. Usually I just talk offhand, but here I want to read because I don't think anything I could say now will express it the same way that I wrote it, because I put so much work into writing it. So first of all, the first thing there's words and concepts you'll need for this chapter. We didn't want to call it a glossary. No way we didn't call it a glossary, because nobody reads glossaries, right? So he just put it, words and concepts you will need. Merav says that you read glossaries.
No, if you're looking for certain words.
Yeah, then you go back there. But we want you to know this word before you get there. And the word here is halacha, or halacha. Right? Plural is halachot. And so what does halacha mean? Literally, halacha means the way a Jew goes about life. So the way we translated is the way the Torah is to be implemented and the way to live as a Jew. So that's what halacha is generally about. When we say a particular halacha, this is the halacha. That means it's a conclusive decision of how some mitzvah is supposed to be done. Or it could be there's some problematic issues, could come disputes, how they are to be settled. So when you're learning halacha, what are you learning? You're learning what does God want to be done? What exactly does God want? So you might learn, we're going to get to this, you might learn halacha, and you'll say, that case can't possibly ever happen. There's plenty of halachot that are like that, of cases that are extremely unlikely to ever happen, but that doesn't matter because you're learning about what exactly God wants. Well, we'll get to that. Okay. So what do you do when you learn halacha? I have a nice article you could take a look at. What's it called? It's about mezuzah. It's called How Do Mezuzahs Work? Read it? Never saw How Do Mezuzahs Work? It was a big hit, like it got 20,000 reads in 1 week. And I thought that was good. So how do mezuzahs work? So what I do there is I take you through the whole process of how we get to the halacha. And you enter into a room called the Torah. There's the Torah in Shulchan Aruch. And you go in there, maybe there's one here. Again, I could get one to show you. So you get to a page like this. That's the people there could probably see too. And what you think you're walking into a page, you're walking into a coffee shop. And at the coffee shop, the Torah is standing up, and he himself is a coffee shop. Because he's not saying, I think this, I think he's saying, my father said this. His father was the Rosh. Rambam said like this. Rabbi Alphas, and Fasi, he said like this. Others say that. And they're not just saying, they're all discussing with each other. Saying he's discussed this. The only thing about this discussion is that once somebody speaks and the next person is speaking, the person who spoke before can't answer back because he probably died 200 years before. So it's historical discussion. So he's saying all this. And then as soon as he finishes speaking, while he's speaking, everybody's thinking, and then jumps in Beis Yosef and starts saying his part. And the Bach says, well, Beis Chadash. He starts saying, well, why did he say like that? He should have said this and said that. Oh, Beis Yosef Cairo can't answer back because Beis Chadash, Yol Circus, lived about 7,500 years later. So and besides what, he's there in Tzfat and he's over in Krakow. So how they're going to communicate with each other? And then a student, he was a He learned, they're both from the same Rebbe. Rabbi Yeshua Falk, he wrote the Drisha and the Prisha. And their Rebbe, the Rebbe of all of their Rebbes, the Moshe Isserles, he's in a little line over here. And they're all discussing, they're quoting back and forth, and they're all discussing. And you come into this big discussion, and then you go later on in the same volume. Here it's in the same volume, you get to the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch. And here is Yosef Cairo is writing you a summary, a paraphrase, just from everything that I said and everything that you learned over there. This is the final halacha. And along comes the Rabbi Yisrael again, says, no, it's not. In Krakow, we do it like this. This is that's what they do. Maybe they do in Eretz Israel, but in Sfarad, but in Poland, in Ashkenaz, this is what we do. And then they have the students of their students, each one like a campground, camped out and put their place on, find wherever you find space on the page and put yourself there and argue. So halacha ends up being this one. Just because people don't get these things, it's so fascinating to see how it works. So halacha ends up being this huge discussion, but when you say the halacha, I want to know in the end, what do I do? But behind it is a discussion. The reason I think that's important is because people get the wrong idea about learning halacha. They think that when you learn halacha, it's I got to know what to do, and that's it. What are the do's and don'ts? And that's very important. You have to know what to do and what you can't do. But I don't think that's really what halacha is about. If you learn halacha properly, let's say you learned the halachot of the sukkah. You learn the halakha properly when you walk into the sukkah for the first time in Sukkot. You don't see walls, you don't see branches. You see halakha all around you. You see, oh, there's a gap over there, but that gap, oh, that's in such and such a chapter, and such a page. That gap, I know about that gap. He says this, he says that, and in the end, yeah, the gap is okay. The walls, oh, this wall over here, wait, that wall doesn't reach to the sky. Oh, I know that. You see all of this. When you come to Pesach, to the Seder table, you see halacha. You see, who was it? Rabbi Yosef Rosen, the Rogachover Gaon. I said about him that when he saw a table, he didn't see a table. He saw all halachas, every halacha that's involved in the table, but the physical table was hardly there for him. So that's really the whole study of halacha. And that's very important. No, in our chapter, we're going to what does it mean to learn halacha? Okay, another thing about halacha, I think I mentioned this last week, is that the author of the Tanya was a great halachist. But that was his work. That's what he's considered to be. They called him in all of Eastern Europe, he was called just the Rav. If you had a question, he was the Rav, he was the authority. And he really started a whole new approach to Shulchan Aruch and to halacha that starts with him. Much more concept-oriented way of learning. So you see that in Tanya. You see that in the way he writes in Tanya, he's writing from a halachic perspective, not just because he says over and over again that Talmud Torah keneged kulam, Talmud Torah outweighs all the other mitzvahs. Not just that, but the way he examines an idea in Tanya is very similar to how he examines an idea in Shulchan Aruch. The way he organizes the ideas and the way he surgically takes it apart, examines all of its parts and puts it back together again. Very similar. And you see that he lays down, this is what I'm going to talk about, maybe not necessarily explicitly, and that's exactly what he's discussing here. There's a topic and there's side issues. He's keeping on topic. It's very different than other books of ethics that sort of flow along. This is what we're discussing now. This is what we're discussing now. These are its parameters. This is the general principle. You'll see that in it all the time. Okay, so now get to the introduction. So in the previous chapter, we learned about what happens when you do a mitzvah. Tova was here. Toby was the only one who was here in the previous class. But there were people here on the screen that were here last class. Okay, they were there. Oh, you were here. You were here, that's right, you were here. So a mitzvah is, we said, an embrace. So who is embracing? You're embracing God, he's embracing you. You're completely surrounded by him. Why is it an embrace? Because we said that the soul has clothing. Its clothing of the soul as its interface. You got the picture right in front of you. On page, what is it? Page 100. Right. The first thing we learned on page 100, you see chapter 2, we talked about the essence of the soul. And the application is you connect to a tzaddik to connect to your most inner self. And then chapter 3, we talked about the structure. Structure, there's emotions, and there's attitudes, and there's the mind. So we learned you have to contemplate the divine to give birth to lasting emotions. And then there's the clothing. So that's what we learned about. There's clothing. Soul has an interface. It has clothing. And with this clothing, it reaches out into the world with thoughts to itself. It speaks to itself. With words, it speaks to others. And activities. And with these activities, reaching out to things in the world, it's actually not interested in the world at all. It's only interested in these things in the world and these words as an interface to grasp the divine. So as far as the soul is concerned, there's really no world. The world is just an interface. All it is this way it's grasping the divine. And the amazing thing the Rebbe left us with is that really these clothes, as great as the soul is, the clothes are much higher than the soul itself. The soul, we said, starts off as just a divine spark, but it becomes a person of a sort within a person. So in that way, it's now its own being. But the clothing attach it to not something that's its own being, just God's own will, which is one with him. So how the Alter Rebbe described it is that God has squeezed himself into these activities, these words, and these thoughts, so that the soul now can grasp those, and in grasping those is grasping God. That was all absolutely clear from the last 4 classes, right? There was no ambiguity. Right? The problem, so if once you hear that, you get that, you're left with a problem. And the issue is that you did a mitzvah, you were engaged. Well, let me read it inside. You did a mitzvah, you embraced God, and he embraced you. So there's no moment beyond the moment of mitzvah, not even in the highest heaven. That's a summary of the last chapter. Can't get higher than that. At that point, we said, you're higher than any place you can get in heaven. There's nothing in heaven. Souls leave the highest place in heaven to come down here and do it. But have you changed? Or was it a moment that came and passed, leaving you more connected with your Creator in some subliminal way? But internally, consciously, you're pretty much the same person. Right? You did an action. You did a mitzvah. Did you change through the mitzvah? So how does transformation come about? What does a person have to do to actually change? How do people go about changing? What do we call it in English? Anybody can say, I like hearing from other people, even though it sounds like I just like talking to myself. But how does a person change? What's it called? It's called. No, nobody.
How does a person change?
What's the process? A human change.
Metamorphosis.
People don't really change.
I think we call it learning.
Well, you always have to change if you don't.
Yeah. If you don't change, you didn't learn.
Okay. Is there any difference between studying and learning, do you think?
Big difference. Big difference. You can study and pass the test. You didn't learn a thing.
So learning versus studying.
Yeah. There are people who study and never learn, and there are people who never study and learn a lot.
Okay.
I know a person who has, he had unfortunately in his youth an accident, and he lost his memory. So he couldn't study, but he managed to learn. How did he manage to learn? So whatever he heard that he felt was important, he somatized. His body remembers it, and so therefore he's able to do it. But if you ask him, how did you learn this, where, what, that he doesn't remember.
So do you
But
think
he
that
picked up the skill.
when they have Neuralink, people they may get the information as in study, but they won't be able to learn whatever's downloaded through.
It's a huge misunderstanding of the human brain.
There's a
What-
book that the body remembers.
And there's so much. I think all these people, most of them have this is the field today. The neuroscientists don't talk to the technologists, and neither of them talk to the mathematicians. And the field is just so fragmented that nobody has a proper concept. So you speak to the top people in artificial intelligence today, and they have no clue of neuroscience. They think they're approaching these problems from the very beginning when neuroscientists have been already talking about it. And the neuroscientists then how can they communicate with technology? Neither of them know mathematics properly. So this is the major issue. A machine is made of parts. A brain is made from a single cell. Even when that cell becomes many, many cells, it still behaves as one cell. So the brain is a singularity. And whereas a machine has many parts that are all disparate, they're all fragmented, and all these parts are somehow working together, but not really. The brain, if it's not working together, is sick. Something wrong. So when you would download information, the information is sitting there, nothing has changed. When you learn information, every piece of information that you learn changes all the other information that you learn. And you have to go back and say, well, I learned this now, that changes everything. You're a little kid. You're living, say, in just Atlanta. And somebody tells you one day that there are other cities in the world. They take you to the Atlantic Ocean, say across that ocean. There's other countries, other people. Now I have to readjust everything I know. Everything I know about the world. I remember when I was telling my kids, I guess they're 5 years old or so, one of them, I was telling them bedtime stories, and one of them asked, so how many people are there in the world? And I said, there's almost 8 billion people. Maybe then it was less. So the 5-year-old says, is that with the goyim or without the goyim? So when this child learns that there are other people in the world behind in your school, everything that he knew until that point has to be changed.
It's like blockchain.
Okay. But by the way, this is the grand hurdle that AI is going to hit a brick wall, and nobody's realizing AI can't do that. These large language models, okay, they learn information, they cannot let go of information. So when they learn new information, it's accumulative, but they don't go back and say and change everything previously I learned was incorrect. They can't do that. There's plenty of people working hard on doing that, but basically, as soon as you pull out one piece of information, oh, that was really incorrect, the whole thing falls down. The whole structure collapses. So they are inherently conservative.
It's incorrect all the time, but when you tell it, it goes back and adjusts.
Okay, in mine, when I try, they keep on building on their mistakes, even though they say, yes, you're absolutely correct, but they still can't make the same stupid mistakes. They'll admit that they're wrong. You say, that was an incorrect. Oh, I'm really sorry. But they're still building on the same assumptions. They won't let go of those assumptions. I tried to get one of the grandchildren lined up a whole bunch of dominoes. It says it adds up to such and such a number. I added up, came with another number. I don't know if I'm right. So I took a picture, put it into ChatGPT. Tell me how many, what does it add up to? It came up with a ridiculous number. You were wrong. Okay, came up with another number. Then says, I'm going to number each one and tell you how much it had everything wrong. It could not let go of its assumptions of what was there. You had to have, even if you tried to teach it. So the human brain does something amazing. You learn a piece of information, it says, oh, and goes back and says, so that means that this that I thought before is not that way. It's like this. And this that I thought before, everything gets recontextualized. That's called learning. I think this was the first great discovery of Jean Piaget with his own children, was that he saw the child who was initially the most perplexed is the child who gets it best in the end. And the kid who right away nods is the one who's not getting it. Like me, so he realized the kid who's perplexed is saying, but this is not what I thought before. Oh, now you're on the right track. And the kid who's nodding his head is saying, yeah, this fits within everything that I know, which means you're totally off. You're not hearing, you're not getting it. Okay. So when you learn, learning means to change, because it means to abandon your previous way of understanding things and see a bigger way of understanding. That's what learning is. So each time you learn, you're transcending yourself. You're transcending who you were until now and becoming something else. Each time you learn. If you have really learned something, you should feel, I'm not the same person I was before I learned this. The person changes. So learning is basically self-transcendence. We learned
There's a big separation between what you're talking about, which is a change going on in the brain.
Yeah.
Let's say reverse, changing. Okay, that's one thing, but the feeling of it is a completely different kind of conflict. It's like there's a very big division between what you were saying just now, that whole change that goes on. That's makes it. But then to say that right away, if you learn that change that goes on doesn't necessarily change you the way you feel about anything.
Oh, does changing the way you think change the way you feel about things?
You're implying that it automatically should. This is what you're saying.
In chapter 3, who was here for chapter 3? We learned about the mind and the emotions. And the mind is the mother of the emotions. Not just in giving birth to the emotions, but in nurturing the emotions afterwards. So if you learned something, you will perceive things different, have different attitudes, react to it differently. You will feel different. If you don't feel different, it means you did not achieve das.
So you're saying learning is das.
Yeah. Once you've really learned, there's das. You really learn. So the learning process is Chochmah Bina, but then it has to achieve das. Yes, whoa, what does this mean? And then you're affected by it. So a simple example is that you learn that some chemical that's in food is harmful. And you really learn it. It would mean that when you see that's in the ingredients of the thing, oh, that's not food then. I can't even touch it. Because you have das. I'll give an example. Some people, the doctor tells them, if you keep on eating this way, and they keep on eating that way. And two of my friends got this message from the doctor at different times. And they said, oh, they stopped eating. I remember I asked one of them, so what did you do? What diet did you go on? The doctor said that the eating is not good for me. I couldn't eat the same amount anymore. I just couldn't do it. Said about the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, that he was a chain smoker to the point that he had boxes of cigarettes in each part of the room. So when he'd finished one cigarette, and another one there. And sitting there and talking with a doctor in his study. And the doctor's explaining to him that doctors thought that smoking was good for your digestion and so on. But now we found out that no, it's very bad. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says, I don't smoke. Well, I just saw you smoking, yeah, but that was before you told me. That's it. He didn't touch another cigarette. That's it. You have das. It's not that you have das and therefore I decided I'm going to. If you really have das, well, that's your reality. And that changes everything. So that's real learning. Okay, why this thing is important about learning? When we talk about the mind, the power of the mind, most people think the power of the mind is in meditation, contemplation. And that's not just a Buddhist thing or a Hindu thing. That's Aristotle. Aristotle thought there's nothing greater than sitting there and thinking. Why? Because when you're thinking, you and your thoughts are one. That's how he understood it. That there are thoughts, there's your mind, there's the things the thoughts are about. When you're sitting there thinking, you, your mind, your thoughts, they're all one. And therefore, he thought that God must be a mind. And what does this mind do? It just thinks about itself. Because he thought that's the ultimate. Now, if Aristotle were a plumber, he would figure God as a plumber. If he were a doctor, he'd figure God as a doctor. Since he was a philosopher, he figured God as mind. That's all. Everybody just sees the world from their place. So he thought the contemplation, just sitting there contemplating, is the ultimate oneness. It's the highest state of being divine. And that's not very far from what's his name? Gautama Buddha had to say, or not very far from what Lao Tzu would have said, or the Sufis would say. That's just meditation. Sit there and meditate, contemplate. There's no higher state you can reach. So this chapter, what the author was saying is, there's something much higher than contemplation, and that's learning. Which to me makes a lot of sense. Contemplation, you're stuck inside yourself. Learning, you're transcending yourself. Okay. In both, there's the same oneness. But in learning, you're becoming one with something that's beyond you. You're transcending yourself. Contemplation, you don't do that. You're contemplating, God, how deep can I go into my mind? What's his name? The one who brought this whole thing to the Western world was Krishnamurti. It was all about introspection, going deep. How can I observe my mind thinking? How deep can I go into my mind? You're stuck inside yourself. There's no transcendence. Learning is transcendence. You now have become one with an idea that is beyond you. And you're always going to feel it's beyond you, but you're one with it. Okay? So besides changing our way of thinking about the mind and about what learning is, it also changes our idea of why do we learn Torah? We thought we learned Torah to know stuff, to gain knowledge. So it turns out, no, we don't learn Torah to gain knowledge. We learn Torah to become that knowledge, to become one with that knowledge. It's a crucial difference. In fact, the Moshe Cordovero writes in the Sefer Pardes Freeman, he writes that somebody who learns Torah in order to gain knowledge, probably better than he would never learn. Why? because that's not what Torah is. Torah is a communion with something great. It's transcendence. It's a transcendental experience. Not all, learning knowledge means making yourself bigger. More of me, more of my knowledge. This is about abandoning yourself to something beyond you. That's why you learn. Okay, so now, we'll get into it. This is what grasping means. We did this page 100, so go straight to reading inside. Page 101. The previous chapter mentions the words of Elijah the prophet, no thought can grasp you. So let's take this idea of grasping the divine further and clarify it well. What does it mean to grasp? No thought can grasp you, can grasp God. What does that mean? What does it mean to grasp? And then we'll say that there is a way. We said, there is a way through Torah. So what does it mean that you can't grasp God? You can grasp the Torah. What is grasping? What does it mean to grasp in there? So this is the part that was the hardest to translate. Let's say your mind has formed the concept of an idea and gotten it straight. Right? Your mind formed a concept of an idea and has this idea straight. That's what when you're thinking of an idea, grab it. You think of an idea, means you learn the idea, you get a concept of it, like you're learning about how a loom works, maybe, and all the parts to the loom. And now you got it straight in your mind how this loom works, or you're learning how does the piston engine work, and you got that straight in your mind, and you have a concept in your mind of how this works. Or the example that the Rambam gives of a water clock. And you saw all the parts of the water clock, and you see now how this water clock works. You got it straight in your mind. So you now have this concept. So you're grasping this idea in your mind. You have the whole picture of it. Okay? Your intellect now grasps the idea and mentally encompasses it. And from the other perspective, means the idea is now grasped, encompassed, and enveloped within this mind of yours. It's gotten a straightforward concept, right? So you took, which one should we use? The loom, the water clock, the piston engine? Which one do you want? Or should be a tree? Which one is better for you? Any of them better for you? The tree. So you've examined this tree and you see how roots, branches, the capillary action, osmosis, the photosynthesis in the leaves, and you got the whole picture straight in your mind, how the whole thing is working. You have that concept. What did you do? This is how the Rambam describes in the book. You ripped off the structure, the form of this tree, leaving its material behind. And you made a copy of it in your mind. That's like downloading the tree into your mind. Not the physical tree, but everything that seer, he calls the form of the tree. You now have all of that. You made a copy of it in your mind, a 3D copy of it, and its functions and everything, a model. So you modeled it in your mind, which means two things from two different perspectives. That your mind now encompasses this whole thing. It sees every part from all sides, like an MRI or fMRI scan of the whole thing. And that thing is now in your mind, and it's encompassed within your mind. Okay, so it's very similar to grabbing this bottle, right? If this bottle was small enough to fit in my hand, well, I grab the cap of the bottle, I'm holding it in my hand. Right? So my hand is holding something completely encompassing all of it, and the thing is inside my hand. The only difference is that I grasp something. If I let go of it, it's gone. When your mind grasps something, it grasps it something like your stomach grasps food. It metabolizes it. It totally absorbs it. So if your mind would open up, the thing would be gone. It now got absorbed into the mind, and to the point that you can't distinguish between the idea and the mind. Okay? So you grasped the idea, you surrounded it, but you grasped it in a way that the thing and your mind have become one. And there's another dynamic as well. While you are actively grasping the idea, and there's the time that you're thinking about that tree, in getting your full grasp of it. You're trying to get it straight in your mind. Your mind isn't developed within the idea. When you're engaged in understanding an idea, like really, really trying to understand it, if somebody comes along and says, Mirav, how are things going? Either you're oblivious. I drive my wife nuts with this because if I'm in the I'm totally oblivious. I don't know what's going on. Or you look up and you don't know what's going on. And they keep on talking to you, usually as though you've heard the first thing. Or you just keep staying, you are absorbed in the idea. To the point, that's why you can't think two different ideas at the same time. I can prove to you that you can't think two different ideas at the same time. I can draw you, those, when you draw all the 12 lines you need to make a cube, right, without any, I should have brought paper, but the cube, you draw a cube, it's all about, and you show it and say, which way is it? Which is the front corner, which is the back corner? And you can see it both ways, you know what I'm talking about. You can see it both ways, but you can't see both at the same time. Well, the vase with the two faces looking at each other, is it a vase or two faces? Well, it's a vase. No, it's two faces. Can you see both at the same time? You can't. There's the other one that it's either a witch or a young lady. No, depends which way. You can't see both at the same time. Why can't you see both at the same time? Because your mind goes into it. You're absorbed within this. And you can't hold two models in your mind at once. You're not holding it, you're being in within it. So on the one hand, you are enveloping it, and the other hand, you are within it at the same time.
Why does he say it in this order? Sorry? Why does Alter say it in this order? Why doesn't he start with the fact? Because initially, the first thing you're doing is...
Right. The first thing you're doing is getting absorbed with it. And then you have the whole idea.
Yeah, first you're working on it.
Right.
So your seichel, it's makif the seichel, and then you internalize it. But he says it the other way around.
Right. See, the only reason I could give you is because his point is the first one.
Sorry?
His point is the first, the grasping. We're talking about grasping the idea. And in the idea of being within it, well, we had that with the mitzvah as well. When you do a mitzvah, you were within the mitzvah.
Oh, okay.
But with learning Torah, you're also surrounding it, grasping it as well. So that's why that's the main point over here. So, okay, let's go to the example. For example, you understand some halacha of the Mishnah or the Talmud, you've got it thorough. Halacha, which can be very complex. Your mind now grasps that. That's it. Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Well, you can watch the end of this one again. So, your mind now grasps that halacha, right? You grasp it, you encompass, you got the whole thing. And as well, at the time you were pondering this halacha, your mind was enveloped within it. You were inside the halacha. You saw it from the inside. You see a nice picture over there? The mind immersion, that's when you're inside it. And the mind grasps. You're grasping this bottle. But then you bring it inside you. So your mind's immersed in something. And then you're grasping it. When you grasp it, you're grasping it inside you. But to grasp begin with, you're within it. Okay. I had a point over here to make. Because he has these two steps when you're immersed within it, and then afterwards you're grasping it. When you're grasping it, are you still immersed in it? When you have a grasp of the idea, are you still within the idea? Do you have both at the same time? Or is it first this, then that?
I think it would be both at the same
How can you be immersed in understanding the idea, and at the same time you have a clear grasp of it all?
by having one, you have the grasp.
This is a very fascinating thing about ideas. As you grasp an idea clearly. How do you know when you really grasp an idea clearly and you've got it straight? When you have good questions about it. When you can identify that which you don't understand. I know a student has grasped an idea when the student can articulate a question about it very well. If I can ask the student questions and the student gives me all the answers, I don't know if the student knows it. But if the student can ask me a good question about it, then I know the student has gotten it. Which means the better you grasp an idea, the more of the idea remains beyond you. Imagine an island in the Pacific Ocean, a little island. Imagine the island, the land of the mass of the island is your knowledge. And the boundary of the island to the ocean is all your questions, that which you would like to know but don't know. Okay? Now, let's say you expand the size of the island, which means you expanded your knowledge. What happened to your boundary? It grew. There's more that you now don't know.
So you never know everything.
The more you know, the more you don't know. Until ultimately you discover you don't know anything. So,
no, that's right.
So when you have grasp
So
of an,
doesn't know anything.
When you're walking around with a clear grasp of an idea, a very good clear grasp, it means you're walking around with a huge puzzle, many, many questions. And so you continue to be immersed in this idea all the time. And you're constantly thinking about it. You know, Albert Einstein said, all my life I was trying to understand what is light. What is light? And I'm not any closer to understanding it. So you become obsessed, infatuated with this idea. So you always immersed within it at the same time that you have a clear grasp. You can explain everything you know. So somebody who complained to the Rebbe that I give a class and everybody nods their head and they're all excited. I explained it so well and so clearly. But for me, I have so many questions. It bothers me. Everybody's saying yes, yes, yes. And I have so many questions. So the Rebbe says, fantastic. They're benefiting. And you're not feeling you're an egotist for the fact that you understand it so well. Okay, so that's what it means that you're really doing both at the same time. You're grasping it and you're within it at the same time. Even though first you're within it and then you grasp it, but you never get really out of the idea. Oh, I got it now. Okay, now this halacha is God's essential wisdom and will. God desires that if Reuven presents a certain argument, for example, and Shimon puts forth another, the final ruling between them will be such and such. That's what a halacha is. God is saying, if this would happen, that would have these, then this is what I want. He's presenting his will in this form. Now, does that mean that God sits back and thinks all the day, what if he said this to him? What if he said that to him? What would we do? How would we divide it up? Is that God's? No. Well, we said before that God puts his mind into these things so that you will have a way to grasp it. They're all like metaphors for understanding God put his mind into this. Now you can understand the way I think. So it's God's way of thinking. So even if, and that's the point, and even if such a case with these particular claims and demands never came to judgment, never will, nevertheless, what matters is that this is God's will and wisdom. If one person argued like this, the other would argue like this will be the ruling. Right? It's not a matter of I need to know what will happen, what to do in this case. It's a matter of how does God's will play out in this situation? So I think I was saying this last week, that Torah is not a solution to problems. It's not like God said, "Oh, I made a world over here. What will we do? What will we do if this happens? What will we do with that?" No, it's God had a will, and He says, "Well, I need some way to present this to my children. I know I'll make a world, and in the world things will happen, and I'll tell them what I would like to do in those you to do in those situations, and then through that interface, they'll be able to grasp the way I think, or not the way I think, but my thinking." So that being so, when you know this halachic ruling, and you understand it as it's set out in the Mishnah, Talmud, or the later halachic adjudicators showing you all in this book, your mind comprehends, grasps, and encompasses God's desire and wisdom. And you are grasping God who cannot be grasped by any thought, neither can His will or wisdom. Yet closed within these halachot that have been made accessible to us, you do grasp His wisdom, His will, and He Himself. So in this way, that's what I'm saying, you're transcending yourself. When you're grasping this, it's not just a halacha you're grasping. God put His will and wisdom into this, and you are surrounding, immersed within it, absorbing it, learning it, making it part of the way that you think, and becoming a totally different thinker, a totally different person through that. So that's self-transcendence through learning halacha. The last line over there, as you are learning, your mind is immersed within as well. So all of these things happen. Okay, we got a few more minutes here. So the point that this is bringing to, that this is an amazing union. We don't usually think of Torah this way. Torah is a union. There is nothing like it or even approaching it among physical things. Nothing at all. You grasp Torah, and your mind and God's become an absolute singular oneness from every angle and in every way. Why is it an amazing union? Don't we have other unions like this? I think the thought about this for a long time. Why he says you can't find this amongst physical things. Well, just a minute. I can put salt in water. I get salt water. I can put hydrogen and oxygen. I get water. Or I can get oxygen and glucose, and that's how I make energy for my body. So why not? Why is learning a greater union than anything physical? So saying, learning forms a greater bond, greater union than any physical bond. We don't have a metaphor of it for the physical world. So basically, what it comes down to, I think this is what he means, is that in all the bonds that I mentioned before, you can disentangle them. Right? Salt and water, you can separate. Hydrogen and oxygen, you can separate. All of these things are reversible. Learning is irreversible. And neuroscientists say that the mind cannot unlearn anything. No memory really disappears. You can learn it now in a different way, in a different context. You can expand that learning, reframe that you have, but it became part of your brain. Your brain is now wired differently. The neuroconnectors nodes are different. The neuroconnections are all different now. It's not like your body, even like your body metabolizes food, changes the food from one form to another form. Your brain is rewiring itself now for this information. It's not absorbing something, it's becoming that thing. So in that way, it's an amazing union. And what are you uniting yourself with? God's will and wisdom. So that's a great, amazing union. None of these people had anything to say over here, but we're glad you came. Oh, and I want to say hello to Jose, because he said that he's going to be watching this later. So I'm going to traverse time and say hello to him now. If he watches through the whole thing, I'll check next week. And no questions, that's it, right? Mira, nothing? No, that's it. Oh, Mira, yes, go ahead.
Does this not apply to learning of anything?
The same union happens in learning anything. Yeah. The difference would be that here you're talking about the divine soul is learning, so it's a much deeper union. In the material world, everything always remains fragmented. All the pieces never fit together properly. There isn't that harmony amongst them. The only place that there's a true harmony is in the divine thing. Everything is one. So there's going to be a much greater oneness there, a qualitatively different oneness. But yes, in all learning, there's an amazing union that can't be reflected in the physical world. Physical things can't become absolutely one. They become composites, all of them. Whereas this is absolutely one. And yes. Greg, you were going to say something?
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, thank you everybody for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hope to see you again next week.
Yashkar.
Thank you. How do I close this? I press this.
Thank
Bye.
you very much.